On October 25th, we're coming back to Melbourne for our first physical MLOPs event. Whether you are just starting in the MLOps journey, improving in that space, or whether you have thousands of models in production, this event is for you. The type of things we're going to cover is MLOps for scale, and that scale can be number of models or the number of people in the team, or the number of prediction and inferences that need to be made in an hour or a minute or a second. So how to create effective MLOps for all those scenarios. We're going to cover MLOps processes and team structures. How do we organize ourselves and the talent that we have in our organizations for better results in MLOps? We're going to be looking at creating efficient and effective MLOps pipelines in an end-to-end. What does the data look like, the feature stores, all the way to the model deployment, serving, monitoring, alerting, etc. We're also going to cover getting a C-level buy-in and support for the investment in this area. We're going to be covering what governance and good management looks like in this space. So wherever you are in your journey, the MLOps event in Melbourne on October 25th is going to help you increase the maturity of MLOps in your organization. I hope you can join us. See you then.
I'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsors, Talent Insights. Talent Insights are Australia's leading specialist data recruitment business. With offices in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, they're experts at providing recruitment strategy and building data teams for clients across industries Australia-wide. They provide recruitment solutions for all roles across the data lifecycle, including data engineering, data science, advanced analytics, customer and marketing insights, business intelligence, data product managers, and data governance. They're skilled at finding the best permanent and contract hires for your business needs, as well as statement of work, project focus, data resources. At Talent Insights, relationships matter most. I can say from first-hand experience, Talent Insights are fantastic to work with. Whether you're a business leader within an HR network or a specialist data candidate, Talent Insights should be the first company you turn to for all your data recruitment needs. Find them at talentinsights.com.au.
Hi, and welcome to Data Futurology. My name is Felipe Flores. Thanks so much for joining us today. We have a very, very exciting episode today. We're going to be speaking to Brad Petry. He's the Executive Director of Operations, Insights, and Digital Channels at the Department of Jobs, Precincts and Regions. Brad, thank you so much for joining. How are you going today?
Yeah, good. Thank you. And thanks very much for having me on the podcast. Very excited to be here to chat to you.
Right. Thank you so much. So I should say we will be discussing analytics and AI in digital transformations in general, but we're going to talk about Brad's experience and his learnings throughout the career. I was telling him before that he looks surprisingly young for everything that he's achieved so far. So we have a great episode ahead. Mate, we might get started by if you can tell us about your role and your remit at the moment, and then we can jump from there.
Sure. So my role has changed quite a number of times over the last few months, but what I'm currently doing is the Executive Director of Operations, Insights and Digital Channels at the Department of Jobs, Precincts and Regions, more specifically working primarily around Jobs Victoria and secure work. So my role includes our technology delivery and digital transformation program, which we've been running for about 18 months on the Jobs Victoria side. All the data analytics, engineering, and the sort of, more of the analytics around data science and machine learning. But I also have a couple of operational areas. So I run our program administration team, which essentially manages all of our grant processes and our payments for all of our providers. And a couple of other little bits and pieces kind of attached for good measure. So it's a very broad and sort of interesting set of teams that work with me, but definitely have a passion on the data and the technology side. That's kind of my happy space.
Mate, I love it. It is broad, but the combination of those different capabilities is so powerful. And sometimes we see in digital transformations that things sometimes get done in silos. But it seems like in your case, you're able to bring all the different areas together from the tech to the data analytics to a bit of operations, bring it all together. What type of benefits or strengths are you seeing from being able to integrate those closer?
It's interesting. I didn't probably appreciate the benefit of having kind of all of the capabilities around data and optimization and business process improvement and design, coupled with an operational area, until it was kind of brought together sort of by chance, to be quite honest. So we had a bit of a reorg internally, and was asked the question, look, are you happy to kind of take this on? And I was like, it's not really my kind of area of expertise, but sure. And, of course, the light bulb went off when I realized that, the entire program administration team that I work with is really around sort of a supply chain process. So looking at a process end to end and having a team that's responsible for optimizing that process, technology that enables that optimization, but also data and machine learning to find automations and improvements of that process. Just like, it was the greatest coupling, I could have ever imagined. So I've got a really capable team on the data side and the technology side, bringing together a bunch of people who are really passionate about process improvement. And after the last couple of years, we've had working through many, many grants in this department. I think they're very pleased to have some allies on the optimization and data side to help them maybe move and do things a little bit differently compared to what they've been doing in the past.
Mate, that is excellent. I've found similar learnings on my side, also kind of by chance, that in my day job I work in healthcare, in a health tech business, and I look after data analytics and the technology side, and then bringing those together, I've been surprised by the benefits. Sometimes like small things, or making changes to the technology and making sure that there's data people in there to help define the data validation, data quality that's being captured, and then having a bit of a say, at least a voice in the process of designing our technology systems, and how that's then that data is captured and then flows downstream. It makes things a lot easier and better on the data warehousing, on the analytics and reporting, and on the data science side, once you're able to have that better integration. On your side, have you seen any other types of improvements or anything, any other type of value that is coming from this integration? In your case, you have even more areas. But what are some examples, I guess, of the benefits of that integration that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there are process benefits in terms of, having effectively a sandbox environment with a team who is very open to change, to kind of, really push into some of those questions around, can we do things faster? Can we do things more efficiently? Where does technology fit in this process? How do we implement that? And how do we make it better for people? So from a machine learning and innovation perspective, it's great, right? Because I've got a bunch of team members who really like to get their hands on new tools and new ways of doing things. And they've got an operations team that's open to working and collaborating with them on those things. Mm-hmm. So one of the biggest innovations that I would say we've implemented in the last 12 months is we have a process with our grants whereby organisations have to provide evidence at 3 points in a grant. So the grant runs for 12 months, mm-hmm. and at 3 points in that grant, they have to provide evidence that, in our case, that they have employed somebody for that period of time to receive a wage subsidy from us. So if you sort of extrapolate that, we've got 10,000 people placed into work, multiplied by 3 points where they have to provide evidence. And often that evidence is duplicated. So you may have 2 or 3 or 4 pieces of evidence within each of those milestone windows. So we're talking tens to hundreds of thousands of records and documents and PDFs and images and things. And before we started our digital transformation at JobsVic, we had some very, a lot smaller, like it was a lot smaller scope, and we got an increased scope sort of at the end of 2020. And the thought of having to manually process all of that documentation was quite daunting for a number of people who had been doing it a long time, and sort of thinking to themselves, wow, like, what are we going to do here? Like, we can't process hundreds of thousands of documents. And when you think about what the process looks like, it's like, right, okay, I've got to open a PDF. I've got to read a payslip and check that all the details on the payslip are accurate, make sure that it is an accurate payslip, mm-hmm. and then manually move some data from there into a spreadsheet, right? And then push that somewhere else so that someone else then checks my work because I may have done it wrong, right? So there's 2 steps of QA after that. Anyway, so of course, there must be a better way. Of course there is. I've got a really awesome data scientist or data engineer. He's kind of a jack of all trades in my team, who we had worked previously in another department before we arrived and had a project that we had done previously, which was sort of similar, using optical character recognition models. So let me just step back a sec. The way we used those models in the previous role was we were trying to find swimming pools right across Victoria. And we trained a model to essentially find swimming pools from aerial imagery data that we had access to from the department. And the idea was around compliance, right? So there were changes to swimming pool fencing regulations. Each of the 70 or so local government areas were looking to then have to go and door knock and check them individually. So we built this model, we found all the swimming pools, we geocoded them and then provided that data out to all the councils. So we come over here, and we've got a totally different area that we're working on. And I said to Gustav, surely there's a way that we can use this technology in, say, a payslip kind of, to scan payslips and automatically verify them. Because when you start to look at the variability of a payslip, it's actually not that different.
Yeah.
So you've got key value pairs that you're looking for in terms of salary and dates and names and job titles and ABNs and things. So it actually, from a model perspective, is actually a really good candidate for OCR. So we go through the process. He starts to do some skunk works in the background in our AWS environment and comes up with a great model. And he's a very humble guy. So just kind of sitting around and saying, I think I can get the accuracy a bit higher on this. It's currently at 82%, and I reckon I can get it to 86%. I'm like, mate, we're already at 80, right?
Exactly.
We're doing the manual process.
Amazing.
Anyway, so fast forward to now, we've actually fully implemented that into the process for those claims. So the OCR tool will automatically check those payslips when they get entered. We have a Salesforce front end as well. Scans, gets the data out, and then provides an accuracy score and a verification score. So the team doesn't have to look at all of them. There's still a human in the loop. There's QA checks to verify that the model's doing as it should. But we've estimated that we've saved, in terms of staffing hours, about $500,000 a year worth of staffing costs by automating that process. And I can't tell you how excited some of the more experienced people working in that team were when we said, hey, guess what? You don't have to manually check these payslips anymore. It's quite rewarding. And when you're working in an area where there's an immediate impact on another area of your team and you see that, that's when you realize that what you're doing actually is having an impact on the business area. And just to kind of go away from the technical side, the other benefits that we've noticed having these kind of areas coupled together is that halo effect across the broader group. So we've got roughly 250 staff across our area. And of course, when you start to showcase these great innovations that you're doing and people go, that's magic, that's amazing, how do you do that? I can't believe it. They start to get curious and interested in what you do, which has been really beneficial for us because we've also been doing a big digital transformation of the employment services sector. So when you get people in the delivery area who maybe aren't so, technically savvy or know what can be done with data, and they come asking questions like, how did you do that? And, I'm really interested in learning more about this. We can then start to say, well, actually, we'd like to get you involved in this other project over here because we need your expertise in the actual business area to help guide our digital transformation, our data requirements. So, look, it's not perfect, but it is good to see that people appreciate and value that work and the work that we're doing.
Mate, 100%. That is very exciting work. The journey from doing aerial or image recognition on pools and geocoding those to then coming over to this side of the fence and doing that on OCR. That's amazing. And man, the benefits and then the traction in the organization really helps move the snowball of change for the digital transformation. So that's super exciting. And I was going to ask you, and you answer some of these questions along the way, like whether you use cloud and you're on AWS, you mentioned, and you also use Salesforce. At my day job, we have a very similar setup. So I'm going to be picking your brain afterwards offline on things that we could do, because we're also Salesforce, AWS, and we also use Duo CR. But your example is awesome. Mate, I wanted to see if we can take a step back and think about digital transformations from a general perspective. And I wanted to get your thoughts on recommendations for people on that could be starting digital transformations or that are on the road to digital transformations. What type of things do you think are critical to get right or to have in place early when starting the journey on a digital transformation?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I've been reflecting on this quite a bit recently, because we've just done a refresh of our digital strategy for the next few years. And so I've had to think back and reflect back on where we started with our digital transformation journey, and the things that we got right, but also the things that we probably should have or might have done differently in hindsight. So just to give you a bit of context, I came over to Jobs Victoria when it was what was called Working for Victoria in March 2020. So you'll remember that was the very beginning of the pandemic. I think Victoria started going into lockdown around the same time that I moved into this role. And it was very much at that point in time, government was reorganising itself to manage and respond to COVID. So when you get a call up from someone that says, hey, there's a COVID task force, they need your help, you sort of, you're obliged to kind of, say, yes, of course, I'll help. Initially was a 6-week stint, and it's been 2.5 years and I haven't left. So that might be saying something. But at the very beginning, you came in and it was like utter chaos. I arrived on the first week, there were people running around everywhere. I even shudder to remember the day I saw the master spreadsheet that everyone was using to track all of the data that we were managing at that point in time. And every day I was very nervous that was going to break. You've got 20, 30 people trying to make changes to a spreadsheet, and you're like, this is not really going to survive if I don't do something about this. So we started from very humble beginnings, and there was a lot of work that we needed to do to set up foundations in a time when there was a lot of reactivity and a lot of expectations on us. So, we've got ministers asking for data every day, people really wanting to know where things were going and how fast we could move on things. And that meant that we had to sort of step back and have a think about what are those key things that we knew that we were going to need to be able to get this thing kind of into a next state of maturity. We didn't have a strategy then, right? We were just thinking tactically and didn't have kind of a roadmap. So when we sort of started, we were like, okay, the thing we know that's going to persist at the end of all this is the data, right? So the technology will come and go, the program will come and go, but the data is something that will always be there.
Right.
And I remember that being something that one of my former bosses and mentors did say to me, that everything comes back atomically to the data. So always remember that the data is key. And so we spent a fair bit of time early on, despite all of the kind of, chaos, thinking really hard about what that data environment and kind of foundational environment needed to be. So very quickly stood up some cloud services through AWS. We've got S3 buckets moving. We've got Lambda functions. It was a very bootstrapped kind of, environment, but it was better than the spreadsheet, right? So we were always thinking about the iterative improvements that we could make. And so we went from that to, now we've got, robust data pipelines. We've got, data warehousing. We use Snowflake on top of AWS to kind of put some structure around the data. And we've got sources of truth and a lot more rigor around data management, data quality and things. But it didn't start there.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that I reflect on that has been really valuable was having good technical people and bringing them in very early on. I think it's very easy to kind of get too caught up in sort of what you have to do today and not focus enough on what you need to do tomorrow, especially in that situation. So I had a great senior technical architect that I brought on very quickly, a technology project manager who is now my technology delivery director, and them together with a couple of additional data analysts and data scientists I was able to give them the space really just to kind of say, hey, there's all this stuff going on over here. Let me take care of that. I need you to make sure that we've got the house in order. We need to get the hygiene factors and the environment right. That, I think, looking back and looking at where we are now, we still have those kind of same, systems and, foundations that we've now sort of scaled and built into things like our Salesforce integration and other applications that we've put on top of the stack over the last couple of years. So I think, and I'm tooting the horn, right, because I'm a data person, by trade, but, really thinking hard about sort of what that sort of structural foundational, that foundation needs to be. And then the other one, and, this is probably easy to look, with rose-tinted glasses on, is to have an ambition. It's been interesting. I've spent quite a number of years working in the public service, and, the level of comparison between sort of, a government agency and a private sector company when it comes to digital transformation and data seems to be sort of sometimes out of whack. Like, we expect that private sector agencies are better at it because they've got more funding. There's more of a, remit and attitude towards, digital transformation, data analytics, or, they're just a bit further ahead than us. And we get this maybe unfair sometimes comparison that says that government's always lagging behind, and we're always trying to catch up with the private sector. And sometimes we don't really do ourselves any favors in that, because we sort of say, well, yes, there's a lot of other factors that make us unique and difficult. And, bureaucracy is a different thing to a private sector, but essentially it's not really, right? Like, it's an organization that has a series of constraints and a series of opportunities. And if you've got the right people and the right authorizing environment, you can execute that, right? So, we've set ourselves a pretty big ambition, or I have, for the team, which says we don't compare ourselves to government. Like, that's not a thing that we want to do. The measure we have of success is that we do things in our area that people outside of government look at and say, wow, that's really innovative. That's really interesting. How do you do that? And you get asked, hey, maybe we can collaborate on a project together, because what you're doing here, to your point around healthcare and the work that you do, is directly relevant to something else. And that's been really important to me, because, my team are excellent, and, the market is very hard, and hot at the moment. So keeping them is very challenging. But I want them to know that if they come and work in an area like ours, in a government environment, they're going to learn a lot, but they're going to be, very enticing to potential future employers as well. And I often had joked to staff in the past that, when people like Google come poaching you, and, big tech companies want to poach you into their organizations, I feel like I've done my job appropriately, because you've got the requisite skills that make you, appealing and attractive to companies who I look at and think, wow, you're doing kind of, the leading and bleeding edge stuff. Yeah. So I don't know how we kind of got to here, but essentially, awesome. I think it's, thinking about the foundations and, what you can do iteratively to kind of build up to a much more robust and, solid base of capabilities. But then also, not getting too caught up in just doing what's here, trying to have a bit of a future ambition towards what you'd like to do, and having the motivation and the kind of, ability to get your team to kind of believe in that ambition and really feel like they can push and innovate and try things without fear of failure, and, giving them that space to try things, so that when they come to you and say, oh, hey, I had some spare time and I've built this, great model, you don't go, oh, hey, but you've got all these other things that you need to do. You say, excellent, how do we implement that? It's a mindset thing, I think, sometimes.
Definitely, mate. That is outstanding. like one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, that I studied data futurology was to highlight the journey of people that come from a data background, how they can get to executive positions where they have a broad remit looking after things outside of the data space, and what does that journey look like, and sort of help people in their career about being able to even at one stage even think that that's possible, but then secondly being able to get the tools to and the confidence to be able to do that. And mate, your journey and what you've done is a excellent example. And one of the things that I've learned in time doing data futurology, where we've done over 200 episodes of the podcast, and then we also do the private and public events like the conference, is that one of the things that I've learned is that to drive change in organizations, you need leaders with I think three core skills, really important skills that I think you exhibit really well. And they are courage. So having the courage to make organizational change. And what I mean is that the change is always difficult. You're always going to be creating waves throughout the organization. And it's easy not to rock the boat, or easier. And so having the courage, and I think is really important. Then having the vision of what it could be. And part of that vision is having an appropriate measuring stick, and as you're describing, you're measuring yourself externally rather than internally, or having an easier measuring stick. You're going for a tough one, and that's part of the vision of what you guys can be and where you'd like to get to. And then the third one, I think, is organizational clout. So I think if a leader doesn't have the clout in the organization, then they can't get the backing to be able to act on the changes and create this snowball effect. And yeah, from your what you achieve, then you definitely tick all the three that I've been thinking about. But how do you see it? How do you see it being able to create change, particularly in large bureaucratic organizations? As you were saying, it's akin to large corporates where the momentum is kind of going in one direction, and you want to create a change for something better. What do you see as the leadership requirements to be able to do that, and steps that you've taken and that people can take to be able to drive that change?
Yeah, that's a very interesting and sort of multi-factored question. I'll try my best to answer it. But I totally agree with you on the three sort of key aspects. I think that's definitely, resonates with me. But I think there's a few things, right? So for me, understanding the organizational environment and being able to work with people and build strong relationships with people that help you build your network inside the organization to help you sort of push that change through. So having people who understand the work that you do, maybe not at the technical level, but at least at the benefits, understand the benefits of what you do, to be able to help you sort of facilitate the change as well. Like, it's very difficult as a single person to be able to affect change en masse in an organization without some, really strong strategic leaders that sit around you and work with you on that. So I think that's one of those things. The other thing is sometimes you have to agitate. A lot of the times you're doing things that are different and that are maybe not things that the organization is familiar with or comfortable doing. And so a lot of times you'll be making decisions and trying to do things and pushing people into areas where they feel uncomfortable. And it's making sure that people are brought on that journey, but also, you really need to keep on agitating, because there are parts of an organization, I suspect, everywhere, where there are things that constrain your ability to make change. So procurement, is sometimes a constraint. Legal and,
risk.
privacy is a constraint, risk. There's a whole range of areas. And that's not to say that you bypass it. It's not. It's actually the opposite. It's understanding the constraints of the particular areas and then being able to work collaboratively with those areas to sort of find a common ground that allows you to keep moving forward. Procurement's a really good example. We've had a number of engagements with our internal procurement team who are excellent and have helped us so much in the last couple of years to think creatively and differently about how procurement as an instrument helps support technology delivery and digital transformation. And, you know, oftentimes in government, you'll be asked today, we've got a new initiative that we're announcing, let's go, let's do it. And then all of a sudden, that's when all of the process begins, right? It might be a 16 to 26 week procurement exercise, making sure that it's all fair and transparent, you know, and then you've got to start the project. And so nobody wants to hear, hey, come back to me in 6 months and we'll have started the project. So I think there's all those things. And I think, you know, continuing to find opportunities to say, yeah, I know that this is the process, but let's just talk about what some alternatives might be. How can we help? How can you help us? How can we help you kind of, you know, break the mold a bit? But I think the other thing too is that I've been very fortunate and I'm still fortunate to have really great leaders around me that support me, but also provide great mentorship. And, you know, thinking about my journey and, you know, where I am now, which, you know, this is one of the best jobs I've had in my career, right? It's been made possible because I've had people around me that are willing to give their time to me to help me understand what being a leader means outside of a technical craft, but also making sure that I've got good technical mentors that help me stay close to the technical aspects of the work. You know, I'm not on the tools as much as I'd like to be, and the team get annoyed when I start, you know, digging into the environments and start playing around. But
for me,
because that's fun, right? I it's fun, but I'm at risk of breaking something if I do that. So, but it's been really good. I've got some really, you know, some really valuable technical mentors that I speak to quite regularly. And it's really just about having someone who understands the technical aspects, has maybe tread that path before with you, or just understands it to a level that you don't. And you're able to test things and really clarify and reflect on your own approaches and how it works. For me, that's been really, really useful. But, you know, it sounds like it's all, you know, beautiful and, you know, rosy. It's not. It's hard. Sometimes things don't work. We have not done everything in the way that, you know, we could have. You know, have we been successful? I would say yes. Have we met all of our objectives? Definitely not. And you know, probably the final kind of reflection on that question would be, you know, and this is going to sound really cliched, but the journey is probably more important than the destination when it comes to transformation, right? So, you know, you may have an ambition that says by 2025, we would like to get to this point. If you don't get there, that doesn't mean you've failed. You know, there's a whole bunch of things that you've done along the way where you look back and say, well, if I don't reach this, you know, there's often a, you know, a disappointment factor if you get 3/4 of the way through and then you don't kind of get to that last quarter of stuff. Yeah. But, you know, having reflected recently and looking back on all the things we've achieved, what I realized was we didn't celebrate as many of the wins along the way that we could have. And we've actually done a really good job. And we're comfortable knowing that we've got to a point and we may not get to the next stage, and that's okay. And, you know, that's the whole point of having an ambition and a vision, right? Is that it's a vision and it's an ambition. If you get there, you know, fantastic. But also don't be too hard on yourself if you get, you know, part the way there and you've achieved some really good things, because, you know, the team need that as well. They need to feel valued, and they need to know that the things that they're doing are important and valued by the organization.
Yeah. And the vision is more times than not is going to be a stretch target. So hitting, you know, 60%, 50%, 70% of it is excellent. And as you say, looking back, you can see the huge difference to how things were to how things are now as a result of that. So I love that. I love that, mate. That is excellent. Thank you so much. One last question is, you're gonna be speaking at our next conference. What can you give us a sneak peek about anything from that side?
I feel like I've given away all of the secrets of my presentation in this podcast. I probably should have done this.
Good. No, mate, that's great.
So we've actually been on the road doing a few showcases of our work over the last few weeks and really wanting to focus in at the conference around how we're delivering, citizen experiences in government using data and technology. So probably go into more depth about the OCR work, which is one of my favorite topics to talk about, probably one of the greatest things that we've done from my perspective. Other people would say that, getting people into work is great. And I'm not saying it's not, right? It's fantastic that people are supported into work from the things that our team does. It's quite extraordinary, the types of stories we hear about people who have not worked for a long time or have barriers to employment getting work. But then I put my tech hat on and I go, wow, we deployed an OCR tool in government in a very short space of time that helped save thousands of hours of work. How cool is that, right?
Yeah.
There's that. But also want to share what we're planning to do next. We're in a really exciting period where we've done a lot of foundational work over the last 18 months with our digital transformation, and we've got lots and lots of ideas about the ways in which we can continue to improve the employment services sector in Victoria. So hoping that I can share a bit of that at the conference with those that attend in a few weeks' time.
I love it. That'll be excellent. So October 25th in Melbourne, we're going to have that MLOPs conference. Brad will be there. Hope everyone can join. And mate, thank you so much for taking the time to share your journey, your lessons, your experience, your thoughts on the work that you've been doing over the past few years. It's been outstanding. So thank you so much for sharing all that.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. So thanks for having me on board.
Thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. I hope that you got a lot out of this discussion. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel so more people can find out about the challenges that leaders have in the analytics and AI space. And that's what we're trying to share in Data Futurology. So please like and subscribe. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Thank you so much.